We know that there must be an afterlife because of the great injustices in this world.
How's that?
Too often in this world, righteous people are found to suffer, and the wicked people are found to prosper.
So that suggests that the universe is not just.
That's right.
And that's surprising?
Yes, because the world was created by a God who is ultimately just.
So if there's a just God, you would expect him to create a just universe.
Absolutely.
So doesn't that suggest that the universe was not created by a just God? Maybe it was created by a cruel God or by no God at all.
No, that is not allowed.
Why not?
Because we know that God is just. The Bible tells us so.
But doesn't the injustice of the universe contradict that?
Indeed, that is exactly why the injustice we observe in the universe must be merely superficial and conceal the greater truth that the universe actually is just.
Wouldn't it be easier to say that the Bible is superficial and conceals a greater truth that God is unjust or doesn't exist?
No, that is not allowed.
Why not?
Because the Bible is true, not superficial.
How do you know the Bible is true?
The Bible itself tells us that it is true.
Oh, okay. But God actually does some pretty unjust things in the Bible if you believe the stories.
Absolutely not. God's actions in the Bible are totally just.
But, I mean, God kills all the firstborn boys in Egypt, children who could never have possibly done anything wrong. He commands killing Midianite children, Canaanite children, Amalekite children. Isn't collective punishment of children unjust? And doesn't the Bible tell us explicitly that God punishes the third and fourth generation? Children who haven't even been born yet.
Who are you to decide whether God's actions are just or not?
I'm just using the definition of injustice. Being punished for something you did not do or could not possibly have done is the definition of injustice. The Bible is practically screaming at you that God is unjust, don't you think?
Not at all. We have to face the fact that we are merely human and do not have the capacity to understand God's justice. As the saying goes, if I understood God, I would be God. We must simply accept that God is just.
So, if killing children is just, and you're fine with that, then what exactly is your complaint against the universe? Why not just say, hey, the universe is just in the same way that God is just, and we don't have the capacity to understand it?
Because the world is clearly unjust. The most wicked people prosper all around us. That is not justice.
But killing children is just?
That's right, when God commands it.
But God commanded the universe to be the way it is, right? So what's your complaint?
As I said, the universe is clearly not just, so there must be more to it than what we see.
Well, Perhaps it doesn't seem just to you, but you said that humans can't understand God's justice, right? If I understood God, I would be God.
Wrong. It is only God's justice in the Bible that we cannot understand.
That seems odd. If the Bible tells us that God is just, isn't that supposed to mean something to us?
Yes, it means that God is just, but we can't understand what justice means.
We can't understand what justice means in the Bible?
No, not God's justice.
So when we see bad things happen to good people, that is not God's justice?
No, of course that is God's justice. All the universe is an expression of God's will.
So when we see bad things happen to good people, that is actually God's justice, but we just don't understand it?
That's exactly right. God's world is ultimately just.
But I thought you said the world is full of injustice.
That's exactly right.
So what's an example of injustice?
When bad things happen to good people. I said that.
I thought you said that's actually justice and we don't understand it.
Wrong. It is injustice, and that is what proves the existence of an afterlife.
Oh, so when God commands the killing of Midianite children, that proves there's an afterlife where they are rewarded?
No, it proves that we cannot understand God's justice.
Oh, but if the world seems so unjust to you, are you sure it isn't more reasonable to think that God himself is unjust?
No, as I said, the Bible tells us that God is just.
The same Bible in which you say we can't understand God's justice? If I understood God, I would be God?
Yes, the Bible would not tell us that God was just if he was not just,
How do you know that?
because a just God would obviously write a Bible that contains the truth about his nature. It would be the height of injustice for God to deceive all of mankind.
So you know God is just because he tells you he's just?
It is the Bible that tells us that God is just.
The Bible that God wrote?
Of course.
So you can believe the Bible,
Because it was written by a just God.
and you know God is just.
Because the Bible says so.
That seems circular.
What's wrong with that?
Okay, so a just God would tell the truth, so therefore we can trust what he says?
Absolutely.
Right, so an unjust God would not tell the truth.
That's right.
So how do you know that God is not unjust?
Because the Bible tells us he is just.
But isn't that exactly what an unjust God might tell us about himself?
Well, we don't need the Bible to tell us God is just. The confirming evidence is all around us.
It is?
Just look at how the world is governed with justice. That tells us that God is just. It's very obvious.
I thought you said the world is filled with injustice, and that's how we know there's an afterlife. If the world is just, we don't need an afterlife, do we?
Wrong. The world is mostly just, but the injustice requires that there be an afterlife where justice is finally achieved.
Well, if the world is mostly just, doesn't that suggest that God is only mostly just? If God couldn't make this world fully just, how do you know he could make the afterlife fully just?
Because if he didn't, there would be no point in having an afterlife. The afterlife is where righteous people receive their rewards and wicked people receive their punishment.
Why couldn't God give the righteous people their just rewards in the normal world?
Because if this world was fully just, and the righteous were rewarded, and the wicked were punished, then everyone would want to be righteous.
And that's a bad thing?
Yes, that is very bad.
So the injustice in this world is a good thing?
That's right.
Because if the world was just, then everyone would be righteous and no one would choose to be wicked?
That's right.
But if it's obvious that there's an afterlife where the wicked are punished, then why not just punish them in this world?
Because that would be too obvious, like I said.
More obvious than the obvious afterlife?
Obviously.
So the injustice we see in the world that God created is proof that God is just?
It is proof that there is another world which God made just.
And God didn't make this world just because if he did, then people would have behaved the way he wanted?
That's right.
So we have a world where millions of children die from disease and war and starvation because God didn't want people to behave correctly?
That's right.
And this is a just God?
That's right. Because of the afterlife, as I've said.
All right, so in this afterlife, you get your reward or punishment and then you're really dead?
No, you're never really dead.
Huh?
The reward and punishment have to be forever.
Why?
Because the shortness of life in this world is one of the injustices that must be remedied by the afterlife.
You want to live forever?
I will live forever after my death.
Wait a minute. So is the afterlife about ensuring justice? Or is it just a fantasy of immortality? Because I don't see why it would need to be forever if you just need to receive your prize.
It needs to be forever, otherwise what's the point?
The point was justice, right?
Death is the greatest injustice.
Untimely death?
All death is untimely.
I thought it was God who decreed that humans should be mortal. Was that not a just decree?
We do not understand God's justice as I said, but I do know that I really should live forever, and for that we need an afterlife.
So we'll be living together forever in the afterlife?
Not together. You'll be punished, and I will be rewarded.
But, I mean, after my punishment, we'll be neighbors.
No, no, you will simply cease to exist.
Oh, really? But I thought death is a great injustice. Oh, wait. Is there an afterlife where I get to live forever?
No, 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 you will be done.
That seems unfair.
Well, who said the universe is fair?
I don't know.
That's right.
Well, you do seem very sure of yourself.
That's right.